You're listening to the Bluegrass Jamboree, playing the best in bluegrass, bluegrass gospel, and traditional country. TheBluegrassJamboree.com.
Hello, and welcome to another segment of Hear It Here, heard only on the BluegrassJamboree.com. I'm Brett Smeltzer, your host of Bluegrass Retrospect, which is normally heard every Friday evening. But today I am honored to be hosting Hear It Here as I welcome on the phone my featured artist and special guest, the members of the Grassifieds. And we are going to talk about their new debut album entitled What We Are. There are 6 members in the band. Unfortunately, I only have 3 that are available to talk to me today. Folks, thank you so much for your time, and welcome to Hear It Here on the BluegrassJamboree.com.
Well, thank you for having us, Brett. We appreciate it. This is Jim and Joel and Amanda, and we're all happy to be here. We hate that we couldn't get Greg Barnett and Jerry Martin and Pete Wright to be able to join us, but we'll do our best to carry on.
It's my pleasure. The first question I want to have for the listeners out there this morning, the name The Grassifieds sounds like a pretty cool name. Where did that originate?
We struggled to come up with a name for the band after we got together back in 2006. And my 8-year-old son at the time happened to be actually listening to a song by Huey Lewis and the News. And he thought, well, let's see, sort of in parallel, you've got the Classifieds, so why not the Grassifieds? Yeah. That's how we ended up with that name. And we've tried for a couple of years to change it, but our fans resisted it. Everything we came up with, they liked less. So we ended up with the Grassifieds.
And what makes up the Grassifieds?
Well, the Grassifieds are made up of 6 members. There's myself, Jim Grubbs on mandolin. There's Joel Barnett. Joel is our multi-instrumentalist. We haven't found anything with strings that he can't make sound pretty pleasant. So he's on banjo much of the time, and occasionally when we have songs that call for a guitar break, then he'll swap out with Jerry Martin on banjo so that Joel can play lead guitar for a portion of the set as well. Jerry Martin is also a multi-instrumentalist. He plays banjo and guitar, and in particular, when we do Scruggs-style quartet, he will play Scruggs finger-style guitar parts, and Jerry also sings all the high harmony parts. Pete Wright, who's a baritone singer and award-winning bass player, he rounds out the band and keeps us all on time. And then there's Greg Barnett, who handles the bulk of our lead singing responsibilities. And he's just got an almost perfect bluegrass voice from our point of view. There are times when, in particular, when he and Joel do brother harmonies on stage, literally I'll get chill bumps from listening to them. And there's actually a brother harmony track on this CD. It's a cover of a song called The Lowest Valley, and the 2 of them just nail that part. And last but not least is Amanda Hines, and she is our fiddle player. Occasionally we can even coax her into singing the lead on a particular piece, but in general, she and I just try to stay out of the singer's way.
Gotcha. And you folks are out of Walkertown, North Carolina?
That's right. Walkertown is it's a suburb of Kernersville, which is just getting smaller and smaller as we go. But it's sort of between Winston-Salem and Greensboro, North Carolina, so It's in the center of the Piedmont. We're really scattered. We all live within about a 15-mile radius, I would suppose, but we're sort of in that general vicinity.
Okay. Well, for the listeners out there, where exactly you're from?
This is Jim, and I am from a little town in the middle of Alabama. If Jerry were here, he likes to say that it's not the end of the world, but you can see it from where I grew up. I grew up on a pig farm there in central Alabama, moved to North Carolina out of college to take a job as an engineer, and worked here until retirement a few years ago from my day job. I have been playing mandolin with the group. I played guitar since I was very young, but I played mandolin with the group from the very beginning, one of the founding members.
This is Joel. Started playing music. I had a love for music ever since I was a little kid, and I think I always used to listen to my family Christmas get-togethers and play music, and that was mostly country and bluegrass. Probably where I got my musical interest from was my mom's side of the family. My uncles, starting out, they had 3 or 4 uncles that started playing bluegrass back in the 40s and the 50s, and they got pretty well notoriety, known as the Church Brothers and their Blue Ridge Ramblers. We do a couple of their songs on our new CD. Probably around 15, started playing the guitar, and played rock music and different kind of genre than bluegrass, and played in the rock band for probably about 10 years. Back in '06, picked up the banjo and self-taught on that. Been playing that ever since.
What he's not telling you, Brett, is he's got all the talent. He can pick anything. We haven't found something with strings on it yet that he couldn't make sound really good.
Wow, that's great. That's awesome.
So he had it pretty easy. But of the three of us, he's the only one native to North Carolina. Out of the six, we have 2 Virginians, an Alabamian, and 3 North Carolinians, and he's one of the 3. Jerry Martin, he's native to North Carolina. He grew up right here in Kernersville. Pete Wright is a native of Rockbridge County, Virginia, up near Lexington, Virginia, but he's lived here in Walnut Cove for many years. And the 2 of them played together for over 25 years in another bluegrass band in our area called String Fever. Mm-hmm. So when their band broke up and we had a couple of members move away at roughly the same time, we just absorbed them into the band and kept moving. Then the third member that's missing tonight is Joel's brother, Greg Barnett, who...
Older brother.
Yes, older brother, you're right. He handles most of the lead vocals. We'll talk a little bit about how we roped him into that, but he's got one of the best bluegrass voices that we've encountered in the years we've been together, and we've seen a lot of bands, and we just love to hear him play.
This is Amanda, and I am the newest member of the band. I play the fiddle. I actually was born in Rhode Island, and then did most of my growing up in Virginia, and then didn't move to North Carolina till I was going for my doctorate. And that's where I met Jim and Joel first, and Jim was the one who roped me into the band.
And if I may ask, what do you have your doctorate in?
My doctorate is in biochemistry. So I was doing cancer research for a couple of years.
Good for you. Good for you. And another question that comes to mind, is your maiden name Smeltzer?
Yes, yes.
How interesting.
Yeah.
Do tell. The rest of you two can go ahead and hang up. Now, but are we talking the same the same spelling as mine? Or is yours spelled different?
Everyone wants to spell our name that way, but we are Smelser. So we have to explain that every time. No TZ.
Oh, you could change it. You can legally change that. I found that interesting because I had some relatives from Virginia, and there was some Smeltzers, or a Smeltzer. There were some Smeltzers that had a sawmill in Virginia. And who knows, maybe it was the same spelling as yours. I never met these people. And I only heard a little bit about it. Now, what's interesting is my brother, he does all that family tree thing way before this Ancestry.com came along.
Yeah.
He's been doing it for over 30 years, maybe longer.
He was doing it the hard way.
Oh, my. Yeah, going to the county courthouses, the cemeteries, relatives, whatnot. I mean, when this Ancestry.com thing came around, he said he looked it up, and it's somewhat accurate. And you never know. The spelling from where it originates is even spelt different from over Germany. So who knows? Mm-hmm. We may be cousins.
I think that's quite likely.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Could be. We met at church. The band was, well established. We started in '06, and we had been playing together, and we'd had members kind of come and go as their life changed, and they needed to move for work or whatever. And at the time, we had absorbed Jerry and Pete into the band, but we were without a fiddle player. And I got to tell you, we put on the best show that we could without a fiddle, but we really, really were on the hunt for one. Everybody says the Lord works in mysterious ways. Well, we were at church one day, and in walks this young lady who was there for school, and after we got to know her and we started talking about everything else, we got around to the subject of music, and come to find out she'd been studying the violin from a very early age and classical music. I guess most of your family played, didn't they, Amanda?
Yes, my brother and sister played as well, and my sister actually, she had played more bluegrass than I had. I had very little background. I hadn't listened to it much, but I knew she had done it, so that was part of why I was open to Jim's suggestion.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and so you know me, Brett. It's hard for me to take no for an answer. So
Gotcha.
eventually, we got her to come to practice, and I don't know whether it was everything you expected it to be or worse, Amanda. But when you made it through those first few practices and kept coming back, I knew we had some hooks in you.
Oh, I was amazed. I couldn't believe how they just rattled through all those songs and could just pick up anything with no music in front of them. I was used to sheet music.
Gotcha.
It's amazing to me.
What would you consider your style of music? I know it's bluegrass, but are you more traditional? Are you contemporary?
We consider ourselves to play traditional bluegrass, but one of the things that we have tried to really do is to honor those traditional songs, and there's quite a repertoire of music out there that everybody knows, and there's a certain expectation for how you play it and so on. But we've also tried to make sure that we inject the very tightest harmony that we can get vocally. We're really fortunate that in our own ways, all six of us do sing, and so we split up into these trios and quartets
Great.
and duets and so on. We can break it up a number of different ways for the vocal parts, and singing in church has certainly helped that. Naturally, I don't sing the high tenor, as you can probably tell, but most of the others can sing all the parts. I'm just kind of stuck with those low parts no matter what. But we like the traditional approach because the values that are expressed there are often very similar to ours. You know, a love of family, a love of God, a dependence there on Him. Just the simplicity of that lifestyle appeals, I think, to our nature. Some of the older recordings, because of the quality of the equipment and so on, we do our best to improve upon the listener's experience on some of those older recordings. Not that we're better than those great bands, but we just focus on different things. Our approach may be different in that regard.
This is Joel. I mean, I would just agree that, yes, traditional bluegrass is what we like and go for. You know, I think one of the first bands I heard that got me hooked on bluegrass was the Johnson Mountain Boys.
Oh, my.
Amen.
Yep. Oh,
really
yeah.
love that style, that true sound, and we can try to imitate it, but it's hard to do. But, you know, we come up with our own sound, I think, just doing what we do, but that's what we all tend to lean towards is traditional bluegrass.
Now, Jerry and Pete, they are heavily influenced by the Seldom Scene and by New Grass Revival.
Oh, yeah.
And
Good stuff.
and so, you know, by bringing them into the band, it did broaden us a bit. We've picked up the Lonesome River Band songs and a few Seldom Seen tunes and things like that. But our writing continues to follow with our originals, a pretty traditional track. We might use some contemporary lyrics from time to time that people of today's generation can really relate to, but in general, we try to write as though these songs are part of the historical collection of bluegrass.
How many tracks will the listeners expect to hear? How many are originals, and are there any gospels on this album?
We're very heavily involved in performing live. We've enjoyed that, and we think that's the way bluegrass music should best be enjoyed. But of course, 2020 happened, and we haven't performed live. I think we had one show so far this year, so we still wanted to get our music heard. So we made the decision in March that it was kind of a now or never kind of thing. We dove into the studio. Joel actually runs a studio in his basement called Blue Sound Underground. And so we got together a list of tracks that we thought would represent a cross-section of the sounds that we as a band portray in our live shows. And so we ended up with 11 tracks after we sifted a few in and out and saved some for the second CD and so on. And of those 11 tracks that we have, 4 of them are originals. There are 2 gospel tracks. One is a cover and one's original. And we have 7 covers in total of pretty traditional songs. 2 of those that we cover were originals by the Church Brothers. So we wanted to also sort of pay homage to the Church Brothers legacy that is sort of carried on now by Greg and Joel's involvement in the music. So we decided we would include at least those 2 covers of Church Brothers songs. Bill Church had written songs that have been covered by the Johnson Mountain Boys, by the Gibson Brothers, by Jim Eanes, some pretty big names through the years in bluegrass music. So one of the ones that we chose is A Sweeter Love Than Yours I'll Never Know. And that was written by Bill Church and was covered by the Johnson Mountain Boys on their album Let the Whole World Talk. And we present our take on that song in honor of Bill Church and the Church Brothers on What We Are as well.
Let's go on ahead and air that track. This is A Sweeter Love Than Yours I'll Never Know, and this is from the brand new debut album by the Grassifieds and from the album What We Are, and it's heard right here on the BluegrassJamboree.com.
You'll never find a sweeter love than the love you gave to me. But I would not be satisfied. Now you no longer care for me. Now you've gone and left me alone. Oh, why did I ever let you go? In this world I can never find a sweeter love than yours I'll never know. Now my future looks so cold without you, my dear. I realize I'm to blame, but for my wrong I'm paying dear. Now you've gone and left me alone. Oh, why did I ever let you go? In this world I can never find a sweeter love than yours I'll never know. A sweeter love than yours I'll never know. Now you've gone and left me alone. Oh, why did I ever let you go? In this world I can never find a sweeter love than yours I'll never know.
And we're back, and if you're just tuning in, you're listening to Hear It Here, heard only on the BluegrassJamboree.com. Once again, I'm Brett Smeltzer with my featured artist and special guest, the Grassifieds, and I'm talking with Jim Grubbs, Joel Barnett, and Amanda Hines, 3 of the members who are available to talk to me. And we're talking about their brand new debut album, What We Are. Amanda, earlier you were mentioning about reading sheet music. What kind of music were you playing before joining the Grassifieds?
The Grassifieds were the ones who converted me to bluegrass music. So growing up, I guess starting from age 10 was when I had spent a lot of time on violin lessons and in school orchestras, and even got to play at Carnegie Hall once in one of my orchestras, which was an awesome experience.
Wow.
But about halfway through college, I decided, this is not really for me. And I put the violin down for a few years until I met the Grassifieds. So Jim was going to church in the same place that I did, and he found out I played classical violin when I listened to the band, and he gave me some fiddle music to read through and play, and I was so rusty. It was terrible, but he still let me give it a shot. And it was not very long after that I joined them for a show and just played a few songs, and I had to have sheet music in front of me for just my few notes on a few songs.
Oh, the humanity.
I remember someone from the audience yelling out, during that show, play Orange Blossom Special.
Oh, of course. Of course.
And I didn't even know that song, let alone able to play it. But I did. That motivated me to learn. So that was the next big project for me. They were very patient with me, letting me play sheet music at first, but gradually transition into listening and playing what I hear, and then trying improvisation, which was very hard for my brain. But getting better at it, and I am thankful for their patience.
I think it's Jerry Martin has a saying where if we say, "Oh, I don't know that one," or "I'm not sure what to play there," Jerry always says what, Amanda?
He always says, "Just feel it." He said it about every practice. I didn't like it at first, but that was exactly what I needed to hear.
Gotcha. Have you ever heard of Chris Sexton from Nothing Fancy?
I've heard Nothing Fancy, but I'm not familiar with Chris Sexton.
Chris Sexton's part of Nothing Fancy. He is an accomplished classical violinist. He's bluegrass, but you should hear him put accents of concertos and everything else into some of these breaks. And they're traditional, and they have some originals and all that. But wow, you should hear him incorporate classical violin into bluegrass music, because if you're a classical violinist and you can incorporate that, you may be telling the other guys, "Stand aside, gentlemen."
We usually do.
Does she?
Yep, absolutely. Amanda's
One side.
popular with our audiences because she, when she knows the piece, she just puts everything into it, and the audience responds accordingly.
There you go.
They know how hard she's working, and we love that.
There you go.
And just to show you how stubborn Amanda can be, or let's say determined she can be, it wasn't very long after that till we started doing Orange Blossom Special as our closer for our shows, and we get requests for it constantly.
Wow, great.
So she has mastered it since then. Don't
there
let
you
her
go.
kid you.
You mentioned earlier about the Church Brothers. Who is kin to the Church Brothers? I'm sorry.
That's me, Joel.
Okay.
And my brother Greg.
Okay.
Yeah.
Had they released any albums, as far as you know?
They had recorded some albums and it was released. I don't know a lot of the details on it. Jim, you probably know more than I know.
Yeah, actually, they had recorded quite a few tracks, and they were being held unreleased until about 1968. They released an album then. I think it was on Blue Ridge Records at that time. It was just called The Church Brothers. And then I think they released another in 69. But then in 1981, Rounder bought the rights to a lot of those old original traditional recordings, and they released the early days of Bluegrass, which was a series of albums of those pioneers of bluegrass. The Church Brothers are in the Bluegrass Music Museum and Hall of Fame. They have a display there, and they're actually considered pioneers of the genre. So they got volume 8. So if you're looking for Church Brothers music, look for the early days of Bluegrass, volume 8. And it's just been re-released. It was originally released in 81, and it's just been re-released by Rounder as they're opening up a lot of their catalog due to the pandemic, trying to get more music out there and into audiences' hands.
I was just wondering how much material did they actually put out there as far as releasing albums, or vinyls rather, how many was out there?
Yeah, I think at last count, I had found records anyway of something like 30 tracks, or so it's probably what would have been the equivalent of 3 albums back then, something like that. But that's about all I have been able to find in my own research. I know Joel and Greg have a vinyl album of that volume 8 that I just referred to, and that's what we referred to when we were learning 2 or 3 of their songs. Actually, we were honored to perform for them at one of their Christmas gatherings. Joel and Greg invited us to go and perform for the family, and so it's a little nerve-wracking, to stand up in front of a guy who wrote the song that you're about to play, and he's played it and he's released it and he's had it recorded by the Johnson Mount Boys, and here come the Grassifieds, and we're going to go play it for them. But it was very well received, and we work hard to try and make them proud of us. Anyway.
Gotcha. Are both brothers still around?
One is.
Okay,
2
gotcha.
are deceased.
Yeah. Okay, I'm sorry. Let's talk about the next track, My Dad and Shrev Malone. And to my understanding, Jim, this is an original written by you.
It is.
Okay.
I'm blessed to have been given a lot of great stories from my dad and my mom also, from really the hard times that they grew up through, make very good bluegrass song material. And so I've collected a number of stories and am turning those stories into songs little by little as opportunity allows.
Mm-hmm.
And this story is sort of set at a time when Dad was 19 years old. He was already a father, and this is about 1946 or so. And he, looking for any work that he could get at that age, he took a job in a coal mine, an independent mine, down in Alabama, in a little town called Brantleyville, Alabama. He worked alongside a gentleman whose name was Shreveport Malone, or Shrev Malone, as he was called. And Shrev, he was a World War II vet who had just returned from some intense fighting over in Germany. And I don't know if he had symptoms of PTSD or what, but he was hard to get to know. And the other miners were kind of afraid of him because there were these rumors about that he was a bit unstable. So people kind of just stayed out of his way. This song sort of tells the story of what his true character was. It also sort of describes the time in my dad's life, at least at 19, when he was the most frightened he'd ever been, because he was confronted one night by Shrev Malone during a very violent wildcat strike that was taking place at the mine. And Dad had to continue to work because he had my oldest brother at home, and he needed to feed the family. So rather than strike, he kept working, and that caused him to incur the wrath of the other miners. And at 19, it's sort of a story of how he withstood that adversity. And I won't tell the punchline to the story. I'll let the song tell that. But he got to know the real Shrev Malone.
And it's been my pleasure to air this during my broadcast on Friday evenings, and it's a great song. I'm sure your dad would be proud of this song.
We got to play it for him, too. At his 90th birthday party, the band went down to Alabama, and we played his birthday party, and so we got to play that for him as well. And my dad, he was a character, and he spent the entire birthday party dancing with every woman that was there, of course.
Right.
And
good for him.
Yeah, at age 90.
Yes, sir.
Exactly. So I was happy that he could.
All right.
Honestly.
Good deal.
But he has since passed. He passed last summer at 92.
I'm sorry.
But we did get to play this for him before he was gone.
Well, let's go ahead and play this track. This is an original written by Jim Grubbs and performed by the Grassifieds, and this is from their brand new debut album, What We Are. Here is My Dad and Shrev Malone, and it's heard right here on the BluegrassJamboree.com.
Dad became a father when he was just 19. Back when you had to be a man to face the things he'd seen. Work was hard to come by, belly's hard to fill. He went to digging coal down in the mine at Brantleyville. On the battlefields of Europe, Shrev Malone had grown up fast. He worked with my daddy in the mine, still haunted by his past. Rumor was he kept his gun when he came back from the war. Dad knew him as a quiet man, nobody knew much more. If you want to live another day, 2 men you'll leave alone. Dad and Shrev Malone. The miners called a wildcat strike, but Daddy crossed their lines. He shoveled coal all by himself, and he hauled it from the mine. Daddy knew he had to work, he knew no other way. married with a child to feed, too many bills to pay. Miners blew the top house, Dad was not around. They said they'd kill my daddy if he went back in the ground. If I don't work in this old mine, family won't be fed. The miners said, you move that coal, by morning you'll be dead. If you want to live another day, then you leave that coal alone. Dad and Trev alone. Daddy left the mine one night, there stood Trev alone. The Tommy gun was in his hand, and Daddy was alone. But Trev climbed in amongst the coal, sat down upon the load, and said, you drive, I'll kill the man who stops you on the road. If you want to live another day, two men you'll leave alone. Dad and Trev alone. If you want to live another day, two men you'll leave alone. Dad and Trev alone.
And we're back, and once again, you're listening to Hear It Here, heard only on the BluegrassJamboree.com. I'm Brett Smeltzer, talking once again with my featured artist and special guest, the Grassifieds. And again, we are talking about their brand new debut album, What We Are. Before we go into talking about the final track, I guess my question would be, so that the listeners will know as well, where can the folks go to download your music, or how can they go about purchasing the brand new CD?
Well, we're available everywhere that you would normally look for digital downloads, like Apple Music, iTunes, Spotify, Amazon Music, you name it. Any of those will have What We Are. Just look up the Grassifieds. You should get there straight away. And if you like physical CDs, which many people do for the liner notes and to add to your collection, the CDs are available from our website at www.thegrassifieds.com.
Let's talk about the next track, When I Come Walking In. Now, this is an original that's written by Greg Barnett, who is not with us during this interview. But, Joel, do you want to say something about this song?
When we were trying to figure out some of our last songs to go on the CD, we needed just more of a hard driving, traditional bluegrass song. And Greg called me one day, and he said he had this idea for this song. And he said it was just traditional, straight up bluegrass, and he said the name of it was When I Come Walking In. So he come over and we laid down the guitar and the singing. He had already had those written. Basically, it sort of got put together in parts. Next the banjo got laid down, then the bass, and then Jim came in with the mandolin, and Amanda came in with the fiddle part last. So it was just sort of write it as we go along, and it was sort of interesting process to go through it that way. But just one thing about the words real quick, it's sort of funny. I say it's your traditional bluegrass song. It's sort of got to do with cheating a little bit. And the chorus, it goes, when you go stepping out, I come walking in. And we had to explain what stepping out meant to Amanda. I don't know if she knew. but it was sort of a funny title. Nothing resembles no true characters that we're talking about here or whatever. It was just sort of in fun of traditional bluegrass topic. Sure. So we had fun writing it, and happy with the way it turned out.
Stepping out, Amanda, would mean I'm going to head down to the store and buy a paper.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
The milk is a little low. I think we need another gallon.
There you go. 3 days later, he comes back.
Yeah, now it's cottage cheese.
Where have you been at?
Oh, wow. You mentioned about your earlier influence, Joel, where you were in was it a rock band? What kind of band was it exactly?
Well, we went through stages.
That's all right.
Started out with some embarrassingly pretty much heavy metal.
Okay. Hey.
And then went to rock.
Be honest, Joel, it was a hair band.
All right.
You know, your Metallica and Van Halen days. Right?
Okay, sure.
So,
I'm a fan.
Yeah, we started out that. So I've been playing guitar overall for I think it's about 34 years now. About 14 years ago, when Jim came up and proposed that we start a bluegrass band, he said, well, I'll learn mandolin if you learn the banjo. And I said, okay, sounds good to me. And
Sweet.
then he said, you know anybody that plays guitar? And I said, well, my brother plays a little bit. So he started playing a little bit before I did. So we just started picking together. And we were friends before all this. You know, we learned how to play. So that made a really good, strong bond there. We were best friends. And then just sort of grew up playing music together, learned all at the same speed, if you will. So that made it fun.
And we started with the story of sort of my surgical instrument. That's what I refer to the mandolin as, my surgical instrument, because I had never touched one until I had to have my tonsils out at age 41. So I had played guitar for already 30 years, but never had touched a mandolin. I love the sound of it from country music like Diamond Rio and Restless Heart and
great stuff.
Of course, Marty Stewart, you know. And so right before I had my surgery, I bought one, and I'd be sitting there with the pain medication wearing off in the middle of the night and too early to take another dose, and I would pick up the mandolin and I'd play, and it would distract me enough that I could get through those next couple of hours until it was time to dose up again so I could stand the pain. And that was around February of 06. And then everything Joel described about inviting them over to pick, that came in March after I had healed up. And then in September of that same year, we opened for the Embers in a Mountains to the Sea concert in North Wilkesboro for about 400 people. And we've just never looked back. We've been anxious to play in front of people ever since. We just enjoy it so much. We enjoy the feedback. We enjoy the work it takes to get there, because we're friends and we will be friends no matter what happens with the music. We just enjoy one another. And honestly, I think the audience knows that. It's very obvious to them when we're all out there on stage that we're pulling in the same direction. And I think that's the key. And none of that's really changed as we've added to the band. You know, we're all there to support one another, and we're going to do the best show that we possibly can for everybody's sake.
Yeah, Jim loved the music so much when we first got started, he actually made a bass.
Oh, yeah.
He made it out of a wash tub. We called it the tub bass. And we actually played it in that first show. And I'm not talking about one of these basses that has one string on it that you tighten, you know, and all this thing.
With the broomstick, right.
Real strings on it and everything.
Right.
So
wow.
Quite a contraption.
Is there a picture of that on your band's website or your band? I'm going to have to look that up myself. That would be interesting. Wow.
I'll send it to you.
That's awesome.
You a picture of it. But,
alrighty.
So I will say this, that first show when we opened for the Embers, their keyboard player and one of their primary singers was Josh Schilling.
Oh,
Josh Schilling, he's now, as you know, a member of Mountain Heart. So he left the Embers about 3 months after we opened for them. And every time we run into him now, we've said, we're just telling everybody we converted you from beach music to bluegrass.
Right.
And he said, hey, works for me.
The Embers, what type of music were they?
Beach music.
Beach music. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, beach music.
Yeah.
So shagging, that kind of dance music that's a Mountains to the Sea thing.
Right.
So we converted him completely to bluegrass. I mentioned to you a while back that my dad taught me to play guitar a little bit early on, and he played guitar, and one of my brothers played guitar, and when I was very young, he would put me on spoons, and I would end up playing the spoons while they played guitar and sang, and just kind of keeping the rhythm going. And don't ask me to play spoons now. I probably am too uncoordinated to do it, but that's how I got started. And then when my older brother moved out, it left me a guitar. And that was my opportunity then to move into stringed instruments after that.
Gotcha. All righty. Now, you mentioned that there was probably, because of the pandemic, there was probably one show that you played. So as far as you know, for the remainder of the year, there was nothing else. Is there anything as far as confirmation on anything in the very near future in 2021? Anything?
The next thing we've got confirmed is an appearance on the Merry-Go-Round, which is a live radio show. It's actually the second oldest live radio show in the country after the Grand Ole Opry.
Oh, sweet.
And that's at the historic Earl Theater in downtown Mount Airy on January 16th. And we'll have an opening act before us starting at 11, and then we'll take the stage about 12, I think, and we play till 1:30. So the whole show is 11 to 1:30 at the Earl Theater in downtown Mount Airy, North Carolina. That's put on by WPAQ, but it's called the Merry-Go-Round. And that will also be live streamed on their YouTube channel and on their internet radio channel, but it's broadcast on both FM and AM as a live radio show. That's what we have confirmed so far. Everybody's sort of in a wait-and-see mode. There's several venues that have said, look, as soon as all this clears, we want you. But, nobody knows when that's going to happen.
Right, yep. Yeah, and we can only wait. That's it. Well, Jim, Joel, and Amanda, I certainly do appreciate your time today. And I'd like to say, as I always tell my special guest and featured artist, I wish you much success with this CD. I wish you and the other members of the band, Jerry Martin, Pete Wright, and Greg Barnett, safe travels as you finish up your event schedule for 2020. I wish you and all your families to be safe and well. We would love to have you back to discuss your next project that you may have coming up in the near future on Hear It Here on the BluegrassJamboree.com.
Well, Brett, we really appreciate it. I know I speak for everyone and just expressing our gratitude for the Bluegrass Jamboree and their playing of our music and the growth in our fan base that's resulting from that. And, of course, we couldn't reach everybody that we've reached if you folks weren't so willing to play us patiently and to push the promotions as much as you do. We just can't thank you enough for that.
All right. Well, it's certainly our pleasure. And here is When I Come Walking In. And this is, once again, an original written by band member Greg Barnett from the brand new debut album from the Grassifieds, What We Are. And it's heard right here on the BluegrassJamboree.com. Thanks again, folks. I certainly appreciate it.
Thanks so much. Thanks for your time. We appreciate you very much.
Go stepping down when I come walking in. This little game you love to play is built where I can't win. Ain't as much to bear, I'll tell you, my friend. You go stepping down when I come walking in. Our love's like flowers, blooms here every day. First few years we had it all, you never go away. But all that changed one day when you said you'd had enough. Put on your walking shoes and left in a cloud of dust. Will you go stepping out when I come walking in? This little game you love to play is built where I can't win. Ain't much to bear, I'll tell you, my friend. You go stepping out when I come walking in. The other night I told you, baby, please don't go. All these years we've been together, you're the only love I know. If you leave me, I don't blame you, I can't help it if you do. If you go, don't turn around, we're done and we're through. Where you go stepping out when I come walking in? This little game you love to play is built where I can't win. Ain't as much to bear, I'll tell you, my friend. You go stepping out when I come walking in. Where you go stepping out when I come walking in? This little game you love to play is built where I can't win. Ain't much to bear, I'll tell you, my friend. You go stepping out when I come walking in. Well, you go stepping out when I come walking in.
Well, folks, that wraps up another segment of Hear It Here, heard only on the BluegrassJamboree.com. Tune in and join us again for more interviews from some of your favorite bluegrass artists. I'm Brett Smeltzer, and until next time, take care, be safe, and God bless. So long, everyone.